remember that one place that you always loved as a child? Most of you can probably recall being excited to go to McDonald's or wanting to go to Chuck E. Cheese. Even though both of these places aren't that extraordinary in the eyes of an adult, for children, they can be an exciting excursion. The greatest place I knew as a kid was a place called Willie T's. It was a small local restaurant, and to me as a kid, it was just the best place ever. It looked kind of like a house, but you could tell it was a restaurant because there was a sign above the door, and it existed nowhere but in the middle of some pavement, with a surrounding parking lot and a surrounding drive-through and a front-facing parking lot. It was a major part of my life as a young child, and it brought me lots of joy. When I grew up and moved away, it was something I remembered because it tied me to my roots. So even though I no longer go to Willie T's, it is still my favorite restaurant because of how it connects me to my early childhood. When I was young, living in Eufaula, Alabama, Willie T's played a big role in my life. It was my favorite place ever, and I always wanted to go there. My first time eating there was a genuinely life-changing experience. I've never eaten anything quite as good as the food at Willie T's, and I'll always remember it. If you've ever been to a Raising Cane's, the food at Willie T's is similar. Chicken tenders, fries, toast, and a signature sauce. But this was a local restaurant. It wasn't a chain. And as a kid, it was more than just a restaurant to me. I remember as a kid playing on a baseball team called the Willie T's River Bandits. It was a great place not just because it had great food, but because it was part of the community. Willie T's was something I loved about Eufaula, Alabama, and it couldn't be found anywhere else. It was my connection to my surroundings, which were completely changed right before I moved to third grade, when I moved all the way to Eugene, Oregon, many miles in State Bournemouth away. I wouldn't return for 7 years. Living anywhere but Eufaula, Alabama felt like an entirely different life. I felt like someone different, living somewhere completely unrecognizable. That's how I felt about Oregon, Arizona, and Michigan over many years. I felt uprooted, and I could never quite get comfortable. And I felt increasingly distant from each of my previous chapters of life. I remember when I went to Raising Cane's the first time, and I found it was strikingly similar to Willie T's. I loved the food there because it reminded me of my early life in Alabama, which had begun to feel like a book I had once read, rather than something I had really lived. And for years, Raising Cane's was the closest I could get to Willie T's, until after I moved to Michigan, I took a trip to visit some family, and I got to try it again. It was just as good as I remembered, and it reminded me of how much I had missed everything there. It brought back many good memories from Alabama, and it made me realize how much I had missed everything. So, even though I no longer go to Willie T's, it is still my favorite place because it connects me to my early childhood. Willie T's played an important role in my life as a kid, and leaving it behind was an uncomfortable and life-changing experience, and returning connected me with my earliest memories. If I had grown up somewhere else, I might have preferred McDonald's or Chuck E. Cheese or a similar establishment, but I'm thankful that I grew up where I did and that I grew up with Willie T's.